Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Well, first of all, because this event must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Now, there are only two kinds of things that fit that description: either abstract objects like numbers or an intelligent mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a personal, transcendent mind. Secondly, how else could a timeless cause give rise to a temporal effect like the universe? If the cause were an impersonal set of necessary and sufficient conditions, then the cause could never exist without its effect. If the cause were permanently present, then the effect would be permanently present as well. The only way for the cause to be timeless and the effect to begin in time is for the cause to be a personal agent who freely chooses to create an event in time without any antecedent determining conditions. And thus we are brought not merely to a transcendent cause of the universe, but to its personal creator.
But the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes,
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't, computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless.
Well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function, it takes
Oh
time.
no, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be logically coherent.
Oh no, this computer
besides,
is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
And a computer is a physical
Not this computer.
object.
Oh,
Well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is you're actually, what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical, It's just another word if you rob it of all the attributes that make it a computer.
Surely Gates is God.
The next question is, and it's going back to a question that we sort of skirted around, and maybe we need to answer this.
Yeah, maybe
Must
we do.
God be personal?
All right. Let me try to summarize briefly three arguments why I think that the cause of the universe must be personal. First reason would be causal explanations can be either of two types. It can be a scientific explanation in terms of laws and initial conditions, or it can be a personal explanation in terms of an agent and his volitions. So, for example, if I walk into the kitchen and see a kettle boiling, and I say to Jan, "Why is the kettle boiling?" She could say to me, "Because the heat of the flame is being conducted by the copper bottom of the kettle to the water, causing the molecules to vibrate more violently until they're thrown off in the form of steam." Or she could say to me, "I put it on to make a cup of tea. Would you like one?" One is a scientific explanation, the other is a personal explanation. Both of them are equally legitimate forms of causal explanation, and in some contexts, one would be utterly inappropriate when the other would be appropriate. Now, when it comes to a first physical state of the universe, there cannot be a scientific explanation of that in terms of initial conditions and natural laws, because it is the first physical state. There is nothing prior to it from which you could deduce it by natural laws based on prior conditions. So the only kind of causal explanation that's available will be an explanation in terms of an agent and his volitions, and that gives you a personal creator. Second reason, the cause of the universe, as we've seen, must be timeless and spaceless and changeless. Now, there are only, and immaterial, and therefore immaterial. Now, there are only two possible candidates that I can think of that could fit that sort of description. Either an abstract object, like a number a mathematical entity. These are timeless, spaceless, immaterial, or else an unembodied mind or consciousness, a mind without a body. But there's the rub. Abstract objects don't stand in causal relations. That's definitive for what it is to be an abstract object. And therefore, things like the number 7, for example, have no causal effects upon anything, from which it follows, therefore, that the cause of the universe must be an unembodied mind or person. So that would be the second reason. The third reason is that it's the only way in which you can explain how to get an effect with a beginning from an eternal cause. If the cause is sufficient to produce its effect, then if the cause is always there and is permanent, then the effect should be always there as well. For example, if the cause of water's freezing is the temperature being below 0 degrees Celsius, then if the temperature were below 0 degrees from eternity past, it would be impossible for the water just to begin to freeze a finite time ago. Any water that was around would be frozen from eternity. If the cause is there, its effect must be there as well. So how do you get a cause which is permanent and eternal, and an effect like the universe, which only began to exist 14 billion years ago? The only answer to this conundrum, I think, is if the cause is a personal agent endowed with freedom of the will, who can therefore create a new effect spontaneously without any antecedent determining conditions. For example, a man sitting from eternity could freely will to stand up, and thus you would have an effect with the beginning arise from an eternal and permanent cause. So for those three reasons, I think we have very powerful grounds for thinking that this is not simply an uncaused first cause, but this is a personal being, a personal agent, which has chosen freely to bring the universe into existence. How do we know that the universe was not brought into being by a set of impersonal, necessary and sufficient conditions? One of the arguments that I've given for why the cause of the universe must be personal is that this is the only way in which to explain how you could have the origin of a temporal effect with a beginning from a cause which exists timelessly and hence eternally. Just think about it for a moment. If the cause of the universe were simply an impersonal, mechanically operating set of necessary and sufficient conditions, then if the cause is given permanently and timelessly, why isn't the effect then also permanently given? How could the cause exist without its effect? If the cause is truly sufficient for the production of its effect, then if the causal conditions are permanently present, eternally present, then the effect should be eternally and permanently present as well. How can the cause exist but not its effect? Well, it seems to me that there's only one way out of this dilemma, and that is to say that the cause of the origin of the universe is a personal agent endowed with freedom of the will, who is therefore able to create spontaneously a new effect without any antecedent determining conditions. Philosophers call this kind of causation agent causation. And because the agent is free, he can freely and spontaneously create an effect without any antecedent determining conditions. For example, a man who has been sitting from eternity could freely will to stand up, and thus you would have a new effect arise from an eternally existing cause. So in the case of the origin of the universe, it seems to me that the only way to explain how we can have a temporal effect with a beginning arise from an eternal cause is if that cause is a personal agent endowed with freedom of the will and therefore able spontaneously to create a new effect in time. And thus we are brought not simply to a first uncaused cause of the universe, but to its personal creator.